Phillips. I am the Chief of Public Affairs with the Contractors State License Board. We are the state's agency that's responsible for regulating the construction industry here in California. We're part of the State Consumer Services Agency as well as the Department of Consumer Affairs. And as a consumer protection agency, the CSLB has an obligation to inform consumers and alert consumers when there's situations which may put them at risk. And that's why we're here today. We'll talk about the specifics of a consumer alert that we're issuing today in just a few moments. But first, since we are here in the state capitol, we think it's important to note that our consumer protection mandates and our enforcement efforts have bipartisan support here in the state legislature. And two of our biggest supporters are with us here this morning. Assembly members Bill Monning from Carmel and Bill Berryhill from Stockton are both leaders in the battle against the underground economy. Both work closely with the board, other state agencies, and the construction industry to sponsor legislation and laws that protect consumers and to help level the playing field for the law-abiding contractors. So we'd like to have both of them share a few thoughts with you, and then we'll get into the specifics of our consumer alerts. First, Assemblyman Monning.
Well, thank you, Rick. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. And I just want to applaud the results that are being shared today, the sting operations of the Contractors State Licensing Board, going after unlicensed contractors who are having dual adverse impacts in our state. First and foremost, they're adversely impacting consumers, homeowners, families who get preyed upon, and you'll hear some stories about how that happens by people who aren't licensed, they aren't playing by the rules, and they're part of this broader underground economy. The other victims of this illegal practice are the law-abiding contractors who play by the rules, who are licensed, who have criminal background checks, who a consumer has recourse if there's a problem with a building, with the quality of work, whatever. So we're going to hear some specifics today about coordinated operations, not just in California, but coordinated with other states. And I think it's important to point out coordinated with other state agencies that are also participating in this enforcement, our local district attorneys and other state agencies responsible for licensing. The underground economy is a huge problem in our state. Estimates go from $200 billion to $600 billion a year of economic activity that's under the radar. And what that means is we lose the protections that licensing requires, and the state loses payroll tax. Workers are put at risk working for these unscrupulous, unlicensed contractors. And if we, with this coordinated activity, not only bring the lawbreakers to justice, but reinforce the integrity of those who are playing by the rules, it will strengthen our state by both protecting consumers but also bringing more resources to the state at a time when we need them so importantly. Again, while we look at the work on these sting operations, focusing on the use of internet to reach families with advertising pitches, with availability that are not backed up by a contractor's license and what that means, they're bypassing any type of regulation, and unsuspecting consumers think they're getting a good deal by going to the internet. These sting operations, what they do is they don't only bring those lawbreakers to justice, they send out a very, very important message to others who may think they'll start making money using this same practice. So for every prosecution that will be reported today, it's also serving as a deterrent to others who may consider using this path to consumers and homeowners in the state of California. So again, I just want to applaud the efforts of the Contractor State License Board, the cooperating agencies, and to conclude, as it goes to my colleague and friend Bill Berryhill, we have coordinated bipartisan efforts here in the state legislature to try to empower enforcement agencies to be able to coordinate more closely with each other, to share information, and to, most importantly, raise the visibility of this underground economy and California's commitment and a bipartisan commitment to go after that underground economy, to protect consumers, workers, and law-abiding contractors. So thank you all for being here, and it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Assemblymember Bill Berryhill.
Thank you, Bill. Always tough for a farmer to follow a lawyer. As Bill said, the underground economy is a serious and a growing problem in California. I want to start by saying how pleased I am to be here this morning with the contractors, the State Licensing Board, and joined by our counterparts over in Arizona, Nevada, as well as Oregon. The work done by these boards to protect consumers should be applauded and is a true example of the cooperation needed to battle the underground economy. As Bill said, it's been estimated, it represents $8 to $10 billion in lost revenues in the state of California. And more importantly, the dangers and the threats to the homeowner who thinks they're getting a great deal by what they perceive as a licensed contractor because they picked it up off of Craigslist or whatever. There's a real threat. I mean, they need to understand, and this is why we need to shine the light on this issue, they need to understand the liability that they undertake when they do this. And secondly, the other part is that we have legitimate businesses who are out there trying to make a living, and they ought not have to cheat to compete. And that's what it starts to get down to. They start losing bids to these guys, and pretty soon they're out of business. So it's a critically important issue. I think the fact that my good friend, Assemblymember Monning, and myself have worked together shows that, you know what, every now and then the Capitol does work in a bipartisan way, and that we can together achieve some good things. And so it's been an honor and a privilege to work with all of our various labor enforcement groups that are tasked with coordinating, which is a very difficult thing. They all have to it's got to be coordinated to do one of these things. And so I applaud them for the work that they're doing. And I think as you see these stories come forward, it really will underscore the importance of getting on this problem. So again, we thank you. And with that, we'll turn it on back over to you.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for your continued support of our efforts and the partnerships that we've created with not only the other states, but also different agencies and local prosecutors here in California. Okay, so we want to get into some specifics now of the reason that we're here. Excessive, illegal, and deceptive ads. It's a popular internet website that I'm sure all of us at one time or another have used. The biggest one is Craigslist. It's not the only online website that offers a bulletin board and free ads, but it by far is the biggest, so it has been the center of our attention. And what it's prompted us to do is to join with 3 other state boards and a National Association of Contracting Boards to issue a nationwide consumer alert. We want consumers to know that if they use Craigslist or some other kind of online bulletin board, that they face the real risk of finding people on there who either's only goal is to rip them off or to deceive them into thinking that they're something that they actually aren't. With that in mind, we want to say, it's important to say up front that we're not here today to say that Craigslist is bad. I think probably the majority of people in this room have used Craigslist at one time or another to purchase something or to sell something. And so we're a fan of the website because we also think it plays a valuable tool for our licensed contractors. It gives them a free vehicle to connect them with consumers and potential customers. And so we think that's a good thing. The problem that we're having is there's a rampant amount of misuse of the website by unlicensed and unscrupulous contractors that are misleading the public and deceiving them into thinking they either have a contractor's license, they have insurance, or they've got other kinds of things which they don't. And unfortunately, we're finding that far too often that the public is being ripped off by these types of ads. What I want to briefly do is to try to get a little bit more specific about the problems that we're having with the Craigslist ads, as well as what consumers need to look for when they go to any of these kinds of sites to find advertisements or to find a contractor that they want to use. Back in 2006 and 2007, we did have an open dialogue when this issue really began, when Craigslist started taking off. We worked with Craigslist, and they agreed to develop something on their skilled trades page, which when somebody posts an ad on that website, it now asks them to state whether they're licensed or unlicensed. If they're unlicensed, it automatically will put the words unlicensed into their ad. If they are licensed, it gives them the opportunity to put in their state contractor's license number. So the idea was if they're licensed, they'll click on that, they'll put in the license information, that information will get to the public. Well, the unlicensed contractors quickly found out that if they clicked on licensed, and in that spot, instead of putting a license number, they could write just about anything they wanted to. And so on the one board here, we've got just a couple of examples that we did over the last couple of days and one last month. We just pulled up quickly. And you see basically the license information that we've circled in red. In one case, you see where it says license information. They wrote in the word yes. In one of them, they wrote in the word certified. In one, they put license info on request. Another, they put NA for not available, not whatever. And so what quickly happened is these unlicensed contractors realized there was a way around this safeguard that Craigslist put into place. So not only here in California, but our other counterparts in Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, and across the country, other contractors' boards use Craigslist as one of the main sources when they're doing sting operations. Our contractors' board, we conduct an average of one sting somewhere in California every week, and Craigslist is one of the major ways that we identify unlicensed contractors because the problem is so bad out there. And so these are the kinds of things that consumers need to be aware of. We're not saying don't go to Craigslist to find a contractor. We're saying that if you go there, be aware that there's going to be a lot of people out there taking out these free ads trying to mislead you or deceive you. Plus, you need to take a couple extra steps before you call somebody out to your house. And we'll talk about that when we talk about some tips. So specifically about what we did with this operation is we joined with the contractors' boards in 3 other states. Last week, we conducted simultaneous sting operations in the 4 states using Craigslist as the basis of identifying suspects that we were going to invite out to the sting. At 2 of those operations, we did a total of 8 operations here in California. At 2 of the operations, we actually had video cameras there. The videos that you've been given and the video that is playing on the monitor here was some of the video that was taken at 2 stings, one over in the San Francisco Bay Area and one down in San Bernardino County. And in the video, they do talk a little bit about Craigslist, the success they have in using Craigslist, and it really does highlight the fact is that these people are easy to find out there, and granted, there is not a big problem finding unlicensed guys out there who are trying to pass themselves off as having a license. So over our sting operations here in California, over a 2-day period, we made 100 arrests, and those people are given what's called a notice to appear, or an NTA. And 3/4 of the people that we found in our sting were all as the basis of the Craigslist ads. The reason why we had about 25% is because we still had openings in our set list, and when you're setting somebody up for an appointment, you can't always get everybody you try to bring out. So we had a situation where we had some openings left, so we do have some other people who were not identified via Craigslist, but the majority of the people in the operation were identified via Craigslist. Now, in the state of Nevada, they did 3 sting operations. They had a total of 23 citations as a result of their 3 operations. In the state of Arizona, they conducted a sting operation which led to 15 investigations. The state laws in the different states are a little bit different, so theirs are called investigations. And in the state of Oregon, they conducted 2 sting operations based on Craigslist and came up with 16 different citations. So that this problem isn't limited to California, and that's why we've joined with the other states as well as the National Association of State Contractors Licensing Associations, which is an organization that consists of all the different boards across the country, in issuing this nationwide release because this is a kind of a situation that does affect contractors and consumers in different states. The one thing I do want to note, and on the positive side, one of the things that we find happens, and actually happened twice last week during our sting operation, it's not unusual for somebody that we bust in our sting to then go to Craigslist and post the fact that there's a sting operation going on, giving our undercover operators names, giving their phone numbers, giving the address of our sting house. When that does happen and we find that out, there is a contact page on Craigslist page, and we immediately notify them and ask them to remove the ad as soon as possible. Craigslist has been extremely responsive. Most of those ads are taken down within 30 minutes. So we know people are there, and we know that the people are there and answering the emails. Unfortunately, though, when we've tried to contact them and say that we would like to work with them to take a closer look at this issue and see if there is anything more we can do to try to make it tougher for the unlicensed and unscrupulous contractors to take out the ads, they've been unresponsive. And so it's gotten to the point where it's important for us and it's our obligation to notify consumers that there's a real risk if you do use this. But we want to work with Craigslist and any of the other online bulletin board sites. There are a number of other ones out there. We're willing to work, and our goal is we would like to have an open dialogue and see if there's something more we can do to try to protect the consumers and to try to make sure that these ads conform with the laws and that the consumers are protected. Now, unfortunately, the consumer that we had planned to be here with us this morning had some work obligations come up at the last minute, but I can briefly talk about his case and just give you an idea of the kinds of things we see on Craigslist. This man had a rental property that he had here in the Sacramento area, and he needed a new roof. So he went to Craigslist, found what turned out to be an unlicensed contractor who actually tried to pass himself off as having a license. He went through these steps and actually put a license number into his ad, which actually can be charged as a felony. So this guy the guy came out, he ended up hiring him and paying him $5,700 for a new roof for his property. It appears now that that roof's probably going to last him no more than a year, maybe 18 months. We do have some pictures that we can share with the media here to show you just what some of the damage was. But he's now going to have that roof completely torn off and put a new roof on. He would have probably been better served just to leave the old 30-year roof that he had on there compared to what happened. And the pictures really do. You see it. You see how shoddy the workmanship was. And that's one of the other things that's important to note, that when you hire somebody without a license, you really don't know what you're getting. Contractors in California, in order to get a license since 2005, are required to undergo a criminal background check. In the sting operation that we had last week, one of the people that we caught was a convicted murderer. We also caught 2 registered sex offenders. And that's not unusual. I mean, you don't know who you're inviting to your house. That really is a concern that people should have. Now, having a contractor's license is no guarantee that there's not going to potentially be a problem. But there are protections in place that if you do have a problem with a licensed contractor, there's a lot of things that the Contractors Board can do to help you out. If you hire somebody without a license, you're really going to be on your own. We can maybe do an investigation and go to a prosecutor, but that's not going to help you get your money back. It's not going to help you get the job fixed. If you do have a problem with a licensed contractor, we do have everything from mediation and arbitration services. We actually will do investigations as well. There's a lot of tools out there for a consumer. And so it's really important that they do look for the contractor's license number. So I want to be specific and try to give consumers some tips that if they do go to Craigslist or any other online bulletin board, or however you're going to find a contractor, whether it be a newspaper ad, a flyer shows up on your front door, there are a lot of very simple, basic things you need to do to protect yourself. The first thing is to look for the contractor's license number. By law in California, contractors are required to have their 6-digit license number in anything that can be considered advertising. So if you see a truck driving down the street with a contractor's name and phone number, by law they're supposed to have their contractor's license number somewhere on that as well. A business card, a flyer that shows up on your front doorstep, somewhere on there, it either needs to say their contractor's license number or to say that they are not licensed. So if you see that they're not licensed, you should know that in California, unlicensed folks can only do jobs that are up to $500 in material and labor. They can't take a big job and cut it down into small pieces. So unlicensed contractors can work out there, but they can only do small jobs that are $500 or less. So even before you call them out, you want to see that number's there. But before you call them then, you want to take the next step. Do your homework. Go to our website. Or we have a toll-free number. You can go and you can punch in that 6-digit number, and you can find out. You want to make sure that's actually the license for the person that you're looking at. It has the same business name. It's not somebody, if you're here in Sacramento, it doesn't pop up with somebody in San Diego. You're looking for a landscaper, and you find out that he's got a plumbing license. There's a lot of information when you look him up on our website or call us up that will give you a lot of information. You want to make sure that they have an active license that's current, that we haven't taken any actions against them. You also want to check, and it's very important that you check an area we give you, workers' compensation insurance. Any employer in California, even outside of construction, if you have any employees, you're required to carry workers' compensation insurance. And we find that unlicensed contractors virtually never have any kind of workers' comp insurance. And there's actually, quite frankly, a number of licensed contractors who don't carry it or carry a minimum policy and their workers may not be covered. So you want to check, even if you find that person's licensed, you want to check out that workers' comp insurance and you want to ask them about it. You want to make sure that any workers on your property are properly insured in case they get hurt. If they're not covered and they get hurt, they have the ability to come after you and potentially to take your house. So it really is something that's vitally important. So you want to make sure that they've got that state license number and that you check it out. You want to make sure they're not passing it off as a business license. Sometimes they may have a city of Sacramento or whatever the jurisdiction's business license, and they'll try to pass that off as being it. So you definitely want to check them out, because if you punch that number in, you're probably going to come back with no license or somebody else. And so you want to check that out. And if you have anybody who says they've got a handyman license, no such thing in California as a handyman license. So if they say that, probably that's their business license, and there's no such thing as a handyman license in California. Now, when you do have somebody come out to your house, you want to ask them to see their pocket license. All contractors are required to carry a pocket license. It's a plastic card about the size of a credit card. You want to make sure it's got their name on it, or their company name, and the classification of license, the ability they have to work. And you want to ask them to see a photo ID to make sure they're not sharing it. A contractor's license is very much like your driver's license. Just like you can't let somebody else use your driver's license, you can't let somebody else use your contractor's license unless they're a legitimate employee. And someone may say to you, well, that's my brother's license, I'm using that. It doesn't work unless he's actually an employee of that company. The other thing that you'll find a lot of times, especially with unlicensed contractors, is they're going to ask you for a lot of money up front as a down payment. That should be another clear sign that somebody's their goal is to rip you off. In California, the law is very specific about down payments. It says you can ask for no more than 10% or $1,000 down, whichever's less. So if you have somebody coming in to do a $2,500 job, they can ask for no more than $250 up front. If you have somebody saying, I got to go out and buy the materials, or I need half the money to do it, that should be a sign to you that they're not the most professional businesses. Any good, reputable contractor should have some kind of line of credit where they don't have to have you front the money for them. That should be a clear sign to you that something may not be right. It's also important that you don't pay in cash, and don't let the work get ahead of the money that you're paying them. That's your best leverage with any kind of contractor you hire. Once you pay them the money, what's to say they're ever actually going to show up to do the job, or what kind of recourse do you have if you've given them the money and you're not happy with the work? The law says that they cannot, besides the down payment, ask for money before the work is done. So you want to have a written contract and an agreement. You get to certain points, I'll pay you this much money. When you get to this point that I'm happy with the job, I'll pay you this much money, and you don't make the final payment until you're satisfied with the entire job. Because once you make that payment, then your best leverage is gone, and it makes it very difficult to get the money back. It's better to hold on to the money beforehand. So with that, we'd be happy to entertain questions for any of us at this time.
The website and the phone number that you have people call?
Yeah, the website is checkthelicense1st.com. We also have our state license, our website, which is www.cslb.ca.gov. Our toll-free phone number, which is up 24 hours a day, is 800-321-2752, which equates to CSLB, 800-321-CSLB.
Check the license.
First.com.
Is first spelled out, or it's one ST?
It's spelled out.
So did I hear you correctly that you circled back with Craigslist and asked them to work with you, and they've been unresponsive?
Yeah, what's happened is it's very difficult. It is a small operation. It's very difficult. There's not any easily posted phone numbers or ways to get in contact. They do have a contact form, which I mentioned, and I noted that when we notified them about these ads, they were very quick to respond. And we used the email address that they responded to us with as a means to trying to contact them to say that we'd like to have some open dialogue. We did that multiple times over the last few months, and not a single time have we ever gotten a response back. Again, we had dialogue with them 5 or 6 years ago in 2006 and 2007, but we've just been unable to talk to them. So our hope is to be able to open a dialogue and see if there is something that can be done to make it a little more safer for consumers.
Do you have reason to believe that they are consciously avoiding contact with you?
I don't necessarily believe that, because they have been responsive in other areas. I think that, Craigslist is a huge bulletin board with lots of different topics, and I know that it's not a very large operation. So our feeling is that they've shown in the past that they do care about this, that they want to make sure that people who come to their site are protected. We just think that this probably on their radar hasn't risen to a level that needs to have something done. And so we'd like to be very front and saying, we'd love to have that dialogue. We think it's important, and we hope to work with you to try to do something about it.
What can they really do? What can Craigslist really do?
Well, the step they did before is they took a step where you have to go through a couple things. Well, things that we'd like, they do a couple things right now in their skilled services trades. There is a link at the very top that says, does your contractor need to be licensed? It links to a generic page, which will then link you to our website or whatever state you happen to be in. So that's a step that's at the top of the page, but our feeling is we don't find that we get a lot of hits as a result of that. We don't know that people see that. There is also a link to our mother agency, the Department of Consumer Affairs website, that's up there as well. But unfortunately, just the plethora of ads that are there, people I don't think are even seeing that. So one of the things that we'd like to see if it's possible for them to do is to really narrow down and to be able to have a posting just for California, so when it requires them to only be able to input numbers into this area. So right now, they were concerned, they wanted the site to be able to work for any state, and they said they didn't know if states may have letters in their license numbers, so they didn't want to limit it to numbers. So we'd like to say, maybe it's possible that you guys can limit just the California ones. There's some way to separate that, so where you can just input numbers. We'd love it on a California ad at that point. We could create a hot link that the consumer could then click on that and immediately in one step go to our website and look the license up without having to take a lot of extra steps. We believe the technology should exist for that. We'd like to talk with them to see if they would agree. That's one simple thing. We could take a look at maybe having ads that are placed in maybe every 20, 30 ads. Maybe there's some way to put a warning in there to warn consumers that here's some things you need to look out for, something that's a little bit higher visibility. A couple things, but we're not the technical experts. We'd love to hear from them if there's anything. And the other states would as well. I think we're willing to do anything that we could do would be better than what there is now.
Rick, do you know how much of what is out there on the website, do you know how much of that is unlicensed? Is it 10%, 50%?
It's impossible to quantify and put a number. I know that I spent probably a half hour on the website yesterday just looking for recent ads, and within the first 15 minutes I found just 15 or 20. You can just kind of go down, you can see there's lots of different things. And not only can they get around this, but there's people with a lot more technical knowledge than me can actually get on that page and for some reason get around that license requirement altogether. On some pages I don't even see the license information. They can get around it. So it's hard to say, but it's not difficult to go out there and find. You'll see a lot of people out there who don't have a license that are advertising and either not saying anything about it, hoping that nobody will see it, or they'll do things like this where they'll say upon request or yes.
Anecdotally, are we talking a third, a half? In your...
It would be impossible to say for sure because that could change on whoever's posting on which site per day, but I am comfortable in saying that you are going to have no problem finding it. It's very much like fishing in a barrel. If you went out there and looked, it would not be difficult to find the unlicensed people. Because quite frankly, and what's so great about Craigslist is it's free. And so for the legitimate licensed contractors, it's a great way for you to be able to publicize your business and to get business. But unfortunately, the playing field is level for the unlicensed contractors there. They have just as much rights to go out there and to go after the customers. Something needs to be done to make it more difficult for the unlicensed guys to do it. This is far too easy.
I have a string of questions. One is, what do these guys face when you get them, arrest them? And
for the first arrest in California, what they're finding is the charges are misdemeanors, it's contracting without a license, and illegal advertising. Chances are for the first time they get caught, they're going to face a potential fine. Just because of the overcrowding, you're not going to go to jail for a misdemeanor. But if they can go in front of a judge and say, I've now taken the steps to become a licensed contractor, many times a judge has the ability to lower the penalties and maybe give them a few $100 fine if they're showing that they're going to get the license. If they get caught a second time and convicted a second time, it's a mandatory 90 days in jail. So at that point, they've shown us they know what the law is, and they're choosing to go ahead and break it. And the laws get much more severe. Now, if they're trying to pass themselves off as being a licensed contractor, it's one thing if you put this ad out and you say unlicensed or you don't say anything. That's just a misdemeanor. But if you actually put a license number in there or try to pass yourself off as having a license, it can be charged as a felony. So it depends on how they go about doing that. But the penalties get more severe as time goes on.
And you said that about 8 to 10 million or billion, was it, for underground economy? But what about consumer losses? Have you pegged any consumer losses, an amount? Like last year, $10 million were lost by California consumers because of these unlicensed guys.
We have not broken it out by the unlicensed contractors. I can say that overall, the contractors board and the complaints that we get, and we get about 20,000 complaints every year, that last year we helped get consumers $45 million in restitution, whether that be rework or a contractor getting somebody else to come in and finish a job. So those are certainly into the multiple millions of dollars. Unlicensed, again, it's tough to put a number on that for us because many times those cases are going over to a prosecutor, and there's sometimes when a consumer who realizes there's very little that we can do, their best course of action is to go to small claims court. So many times we don't control or have a good accounting of how much money they've lost.
And what role do you think the bad economy is playing in this?
Well, the bad economy certainly is playing. It's difficult enough for the licensed contractors to find work in a good economy out there. Now that they're forced to compete against these guys, in many cases, some of these contractors could have their license and would be perfectly good contractors. Many of them have gotten laid off from their construction jobs, and they're trying to make money on the side. Our goal is not to put them out of business. Anytime we do these sting operations, one of the things that they leave with, not only do they leave with the notice to appear, but we give them a packet with an application, a booklet about how to get your contractor's license. And we'll do everything we can to help get them, in to the group of licensed contractors. So our goal is not to put them out of business, but if they go and show that they're going to try to work outside the law, that's when the penalties are going to get a lot more severe. So a lot of times, too, we will look for repeat offenders, and a lot of our sting operations do focus on those people who've been caught before.
I was thinking more about the consumers. Aren't they looking for a cheap break, too?
You know what? We all want to get a job done for the cheapest rate. The thing that's important to remember is it's not like, hiring a contractor is not like buying a TV set. If you're going to buy a TV set, you figure out the model you want, then you go, you shop the best price, no matter what, I'm getting the same TV set. All contractors, especially unlicensed, are not created equal. Just because somebody says they can do the job or they're going to underbid you doesn't mean that's what they're going to do the job for. They're either going to just take your money and take off. They're going to try to then sell you up and say, actually, well, I got into this job, it actually needs more, I need another $1,000. Or you're going to end up having the problem like our one consumer had where he paid the $5,700, now he has to hire somebody to come in and tear it out and do it again. So you may think you're getting a good deal on the front end, but many times with these unlicensed contractors, you're going to have to pay a lot more in the long run. And so it's not so simple to say, yeah, we all want to get the cheapest deal, but you got to be really smart. Your home is your biggest investment. It's worth doing your homework, maybe spending a little bit more. And that's why we recommend that consumers get at least 3 bids when they're hiring contractors and don't necessarily go for the lowest bid, especially if there's a big gap in between one bid and another. There's got to be some reason that person can give you such a good deal. Either they're not paying their workers' comp insurance, their bonds, their license information. They're not paying for that, or they're cutting corners. They're paying people, their employees, in cash under the table. They're doing other things that contribute to the underground economy, or they're going to use inferior products. You think you're going to be getting one kind of a water faucet, and then you get some kind of cheap one that breaks in 3 months. So you don't necessarily go for the cheapest price. You really do your homework and make the investment in your home.
Rick, at the beginning of the news conference, you said this problem was on the rise. How do can you quantify that?
Well, we just as I said, we use Craigslist as one of the resources when we do our sting operations every week. We have other ways of finding them as well, either complaints, other contractors tell us who they're competing against and losing jobs to. But we're just finding that there's just more and more ads that we're seeing on Craigslist that are from unlicensed contractors, especially these kind that are skirting the requirements in advertising law and what they have to disclose. We just see as time goes on, more and more people are using the internet, and more people, because it is a free service, more and more people are using this. And we just find that, and with our partners in the other states, that this problem has just really gotten out of hand now, and it's impossible for the legitimate ones. For many consumers, it's impossible to tell who's legitimate and who's not.
Are your undercover stings bearing more fruit? I mean, are you arresting more people or finding that they are, in fact, unlicensed contractors?
The thing is, when we set up an undercover sting operation, we're only inviting people out who we believe are unlicensed. So our numbers aren't necessarily higher, but what we're finding is, we never have, unfortunately, problems finding unlicensed people to bring out to a sting operation. If we wanted to, we could do a sting every day, and we would still have no problem. The people are going to be out there, and that's why it's important that this consumer alert is issued, to let consumers know that we can't be everywhere. These people are going to be out there, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. Because if you do run into a problem, there may not be much that anybody can do to help, and you may end up losing money. And as we saw in this one consumer case, and a lot of consumer cases, they're losing thousands of dollars. This is like somebody coming into your house with a gun and robbing you, the way that they're able to quickly get thousands of dollars out of you, and you've got very little you can do to go after them. Okay. All right. We'll be available if you have any other questions, but other than that, thank you for joining us, and thank you.